One of the places business owners in Florida feel the most confident is their bank accounts. They know where the money is, they know how to access it, they've been managing it for years. And that confidence makes sense because your accounts are where everything flows through. Revenue comes in, expenses go out, payroll gets processed, vendors get paid. It's the operational heartbeat of the business. So when things are running normally, there's a sense of control there. But here's the part that most people don't stop to think about. What happens to those accounts if you're still alive, but you can't act? Not gone, not deceased, just temporarily or permanently unable to manage things. Maybe it's a medical situation. Maybe it's a surgery. Maybe it's an unexpected event. Maybe it's something that takes you out of day-to-day decision making. And suddenly the question is not, where is the money? It's who can actually access it. I hear this assumption all the time. Business owners will say, well, my spouse could just go to the bank, or my business partner would handle it. My office manager knows everything. And emotionally, that feels reasonable. It feels like common sense. But banks don't operate on emotion. They don't operate on familiarity or your intention. They don't operate on, well, this person has always been involved. Banks operate on one thing, authority. And authority does not come from intention. It comes from structure. Here's a reality that most business owners don't hear until they're already in the situation. Banks are usually the first place that things freeze when authority is not clear. Not because anyone's being difficult, not because the bank is trying to create problems, but because they are legally required to follow extremely specific rules. They need to know with certainty who is authorized to act on that account. And if that authority is not clearly documented, they default to restriction. Let me give you a real world example. I worked with a business owner whose company had multiple accounts, operating account, payroll account, reserve funds. Everything was well organized, but everything was also controlled by one person. Then that person became temporarily incapacitated. And within days, the business started to feel it. The spouse went to the bank and was told, we're sorry, we can't give you access. Even though they were married, even though they were aware of the business, even though they were trying to help, there was no legal authority in place. So the bank could not release the funds to the spouse. Payroll became a question. Vendors were waiting. Automatic payments started failing. And the business was not failing because it was not profitable. It was struggling because it couldn't access its own money. That's the difference between financial success and operational continuity. Here's another scenario that I've seen. A business with a partner, but only one person was listed as the primary signer on key bank accounts. When something happened to that one person, the partner assumed that they could step in immediately, but the bank required documentation, verification, approval processes, and those delays created real consequences for the business. Because business does not pause while paperwork gets sorted out. Clients still expect services and the materials that they've purchased. Employees still expect payroll. Independent contractors still need to be paid. Vendors still expect payment. This is why this issue matters more than people realize. Because when access is delayed, everything connected to that access is affected. So here are a few key things that most business owners are never told, but should be thinking about. First, who has actual authority on your accounts today? Not who you trust, not who you assume could step in, but who is legally authorized right now. Second, what happens if that authority needs to shift? Is there a mechanism already in place, or does someone have to go through a process while the business is waiting? Third, are your business accounts aligned with your overall plan, or are they operating independently of it? Because this is where gaps tend to show up. The business structure says one thing, the estate plan says another, and the bank accounts are somewhere in between. And when those pieces are not coordinated, access becomes very unclear. And unclear access leads to delays. This is also why this is not something most accomplished business owners want to guess at. Not because they're not capable, but because once access is restricted, there's no quick work around that. You can't walk into a bank and explain your intentions. You can't say, I promise this is what they would have wanted. The bank cannot rely on that. They rely on documentation, on structure, on what has already been established. That's why this has to be designed before it's tested, not after. Now, if you've never thought about your bank accounts this way, that's completely normal. Most business owners focus on revenue, on growth, on operations, not contingency. But at a certain point, there's a shift. You start to realize continuity is not abstract. It's operational. And now you've got sufficient revenue to protect and to think about the future. It affects whether your business can function on a day-to-day level, whether you have a continuity plan or not. And that's where this becomes important. Not as a theory, but as something very real. Now, just so that you understand where my perspective comes from, I'm Sonia Muñoz Gallagher, an estate planning and business succession attorney in Florida, and the owner of Family Wealth Law. I've worked with business owners in exactly these situations, and I've seen how quickly things can become complicated when access and authority are not clearly structured. So when I talk about this, I'm not talking about a what if. I'm talking about what actually happens, and more importantly, about how to prevent it. This is one of the exact scenarios that I break down in my free masterclass for Florida business owners. We go deeper into how authority is structured, how access is protected, and how to make sure that your business is not vulnerable to delays or account freezes. Because this is not about adding more complexity to your life and to your business. It's about removing uncertainty so that your business can continue operating, even if something unexpected were to happen. If this is something that you have not looked at yet, or you're not completely sure how your accounts would function in this situation, this is the right time to get clarity. You can register for the free masterclass at www.familywealthlaw.net/webinars. And once you understand how this works, you'll start to look at your business differently, not just in terms of money, but in terms of access, of control, and of continuity. And that's what keeps everything moving when it matters most.